Emilio was surprised to notice an incredible resemblance between the pianist of that performance and Leia, his former love. Was it a mere coincidence, or was he in the presence of the same person who had broken his heart in the past? Not everyone has the opportunity to relive their first love, and now Emilio faces the decision of whether to allow himself to experience this passion again. Find out if he will have the courage to embrace this second chance at love in his life. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. On that sunny spring afternoon, Emilio received the news that would change his life forever. He had been accepted into the university of his dreams, a renowned institution that opened doors to a bright future. With a radiant smile that lit up his eyes, Emilio knew that a new and exciting journey was about to begin. He couldn't wait to share the news with his parents. He could barely contain his excitement as he ran home to share the announcement. His parents, upon hearing Emilio's words, were also filled with pride and emotion. To celebrate this memorable achievement, the family decided to take a break and celebrate at Emilio's favourite spot, a charming, cosy cafe, known for serving, in the young man's own words, the best chocolate cake in the world. Amidst steaming cups of coffee and generous slices of chocolate cake, the family dreamed big about the young man's future. They knew that the upcoming classes in a few months would represent a time of growth and maturity for Emilio, as he would have to face the exciting yet challenging journey of moving alone to a new city. At that precise moment, an animated group of 4 friends walked through the door of the charming cafe. Emilio's eyes, which had previously been focused on the family conversation, were irresistibly drawn to one of the young women in the group. She had long hair that flowed gracefully over her shoulders, a smooth walk that seemed like a subtle dance, and delicate features that made her stand out in the crowd. Emilio, are you still listening to us?" asked his father, noticing his son's sudden distraction. Emilio blinked a few times, returning to reality, while his cheeks tinged with a light blush. He shook his head, trying to regain focus, but the image of the unknown young woman continued to dance in his mind. The friends took a table right behind Emilio, forcing him to subtly turn around to catch a glimpse of the young woman who had captured his attention so irresistibly. His heart beat a little faster with each furtive glance he cast in her direction. "You'll end up breaking your neck if you keep turning like that," joked his father with a playful smile. "Go over there and introduce yourself to the young lady," he suggested with a knowing look. Emilio just smiled somewhat nervously at his father. He was, after all, extremely shy, and the idea of approaching that enchanting young woman filled him with anxiety. Suddenly, as if a spell had taken over the place, a sweet melody began to fill the cafe. The sound came from an old piano resting at the back of the charming cafe. As the notes flowed gracefully and precisely, curious glances directed towards the source of that beautiful melody. To Emilio's surprise and delight, it was the mysterious young woman who had previously caught his attention. Her fingers glided over the keys with a skill that left everyone impressed. It was an extra touch of enchantment for Emilio, who was now completely captivated by the young woman, not only by her beauty, but also by her incredible dexterity. When the young pianist concluded her magnificent performance, a wave of applause filled the cafe. With a grateful smile, she bowed gracefully in thanks. Emilio couldn't help but join in the enthusiastic applause. Then, the gazes of the young woman and Emilio met. Time seemed to stand still. A soft and captivating smile curved the young woman's lips as she looked away and returned to her friends. For the rest of that day, Emilio tried to divert his thoughts from the young pianist, but she kept appearing in his mind, accompanied by involuntary sighs. The next day, Emilio returned to the cafe, his heart full of hope to see her again. He continued visiting the place in the following days, but unfortunately, he did not see her again. 3 long days passed when, finally, as he walked past the cafe, Emilio saw the young woman again, seated at the piano, immersed in her music. He entered, chose a nearby table, and watched her performance attentively. This time, the cafe was partially empty, But at the end of the performance, Emilio did not hesitate and applauded enthusiastically. The young pianist, noticing the solitary applause, turned towards Emilio and gave him an affectionate smile. This time the young pianist was alone, which gave Emilio an extra dose of courage. He took a deep breath and approached her with his heart pounding in his chest. "You play very well. I saw you playing the other day when I was here with my family," he said with a friendly smile, trying to stay calm despite his nervousness. "Thank you, yes, I remember you," she replied with a shy but kind look. Emilio felt his heart leap with joy, knowing that she remembered him. And so, in that special little corner, Emilio and the young woman named Leah took the first steps of a brief but deeply meaningful relationship. They were young, exploring the sweetness and challenges of first love. Each encounter, each glance, and each gesture were charged with an intensity that only first love could provide. They met at that lovely cafe, where the piano music seemed to accompany them like a soundtrack to their emotions. They had picnics in the park, sharing laughter and secrets under the bright sun. They went to the movies where they exchanged furtive glances in the dark, sharing the suspense and tenderness of the big screen. Deep down, they knew they had little time until Emilio moved away to start university, beginning a new phase in their lives. But they also knew that what they were experiencing was special, and each moment together was precious. Each passing day brought them closer, and they were determined to make the most of every moment. Emilio was eager to introduce Leah to his family, and with that in mind, he planned a special dinner at his house. When Leah arrived, she was warmly welcomed by Emilio's family, who were thrilled to finally meet the girl who had been making their son's heartbeat faster. The atmosphere was one of joy and anticipation, but something was about to be revealed that would drastically change the course of the evening. Seated at the dinner table, Leah shared stories about her family, including the names of her parents. It was at that moment that Emilio's father, who had been smiling until then, turned as pale as a sheet. He abruptly stood up from the table and said in a firm but wrathful voice, "Are you Pierre Roche's daughter? I'm sorry, but I must ask you to leave my house immediately. No Roche is welcome here." The reaction left Emilio shocked. He couldn't comprehend the reason for such a hostile response. His mother tried to calm the situation, casting an apologetic glance at Leah. "I'm sorry for this, Leah," she said gently, "but I think it's best if Emilio takes you home." A story from the past, until then unknown to the young Emilio and Leah, surfaced that night, revealing a deep connection between their families that they had never imagined. Emilio and Leah's parents had been inseparable friends since childhood. When they became adults, they decided to go into business together and founded a company. Initially, everything was going wonderfully. The business thrived and their friendship grew stronger. However, like many partnerships, disagreements began to arise on various matters. The discord became irreconcilable, and the only option left was to dissolve the partnership. What Emilio's father did not expect was that the original contract, signed when the company was created, was imprecise about each person's share in the company. By a twist of fate, Leah's father ended up with the company unfairly, while Emilio's father was left with practically nothing. A legal battle began, and this dispute between the two former partners dragged on for years in court, never reaching the fair conclusion that Emilio's father had hoped for. All of this had happened long before Leah and Emilio were even born. The weight of the past and the decisions made by their parents was now being revealed. The two young lovers, Emilio and Leah, persisted in secretly meeting, ignoring the bans imposed by their parents. In the innocence of adolescence, they could not understand how an old feud between their families could prevent them from loving each other. Despite Emilio's move to another city, the two continued to communicate through letters. At that time, cell phones were not yet a reality, so they committed to writing daily, sending letters that travelled long distances to reach each other's hearts. One weekend a month, Emilio would return to his hometown to visit his parents, and these were the occasions when he and Leah would catch up and miss each other less. In one of these meetings, Emilio's father somehow discovered that the young couple continued to meet despite the bans. Driven by the hatred and resentment he felt towards Leah's family, he decided it was time to end this situation once and for all. Emilio's father devised a cunning plan to make Emilio witness Leah talking to another young man and spread rumors about her relationship with this boy. Emilio's passionate and vulnerable heart was shattered when he saw the scene his father had orchestrated. The trust he had in Leah was shaken by the rumors and the false evidence presented to him. Emilio's father's plan worked as expected, abruptly ending the relationship between Emilio and Leah. That brief but intense relationship with Leah left deep marks on Emilio's life. She had been his first love, and what happened between them had shaped the way he viewed the world and relationships. The distrust, sown in the final moments of his relationship with Leah, persisted within him, haunting his subsequent relationships. There was always the worry of being deceived or betrayed, which resulted in a series of frustrating and complicated relationships over the years. 3 decades had passed since those youthful days. Emilio was now a man nearing 50, with grey hair and wrinkles that told stories of a life lived. And at that moment, he was back in his hometown for a sad and painful event: his father's funeral. Embracing his mother, Emilio said goodbye to his father with a mix of sadness and longing. Emilio decided to spend a few more days with his mother to help her cope with the grieving process and adapt to the new reality. It was the Christmas season, a time that used to fill the house with joy, decorations, and lights. However, that year, the house was silent and sad, reflecting the absence of his father. "Mum, Dad loved Christmas, and I'm sure he wouldn't want to see our house so sad. How about we buy some decorations and adorn the house in his honor?" suggested Emilio to his mother. Though reluctant, she eventually agreed to the idea. When Emilio and his mother arrived at the city's shopping mall, they immediately noticed a great hustle and bustle. The place was preparing for a Christmas presentation, with singers and instrumentalists in position, and a crowd of people eager to watch the show. It was evident that some of the event's organizing team were worried and agitated, suggesting that something wasn't going as planned. Curious, Emilio began to observe closely, eager to see how the situation would unfold. It was then that one of the organizers approached a person sitting, probably waiting to watch the show, and led them to the piano. As soon as the presentation began, all the previous confusion and agitation disappeared. What unfolded before Emilio's eyes and everyone present was a beautiful and moving Christmas performance, with musical instruments and a charming choir. The sound filled the space and touched the hearts of those watching. While watching the pianist with admiration, Emilio couldn't help but notice her striking resemblance to Leah, his former girlfriend. "Mum, doesn't that woman at the piano look like Leah, my old girlfriend?" Emilio commented, almost incredulous at what he was seeing. His mother confirmed his suspicions. "Yes, that's her, my son. Leah has become a well-known pianist. She has played in the most famous concerts in the country. She's still beautiful. That woman really broke my heart in the past," Emilio confided, his voice filled with emotion and nostalgia. His mother looked at him with understanding and, after a moment of silence, decided to reveal a truth that had been kept secret for so long. "My son, Leah never did anything. Everything that happened back then was something your father did to separate you two." Emilio looked at his elderly mother with a mix of emotions. He had just buried his father and, despite all the frustration and disappointment over the long-held secret, he knew it was not the time for fights or misunderstandings. "Mum, wait here for a moment. I have a 30-year-old matter to resolve," said Emilio as he walked away from her towards Leah. He approached Leah, observing her with admiration. "You really play very well. I saw you playing 30 years ago in a coffee shop," he said, his voice laden with nostalgia. Leah's smile brightened radiantly upon hearing Emilio's words. "Thank you. I remember you," she replied playfully, as if the years had melted away before them at that moment. The two seemed lost in their memories, mentally reliving moments from the past as they looked into each other's eyes. It was as if time had rolled back and for an instant they were young again, sharing the same love and connection they had felt so long ago. There, in that unexpected and emotional encounter, a new stage began for a relationship from the past. It was a second chance at love, an opportunity to rebuild what time and secrets had worn away. Emilio finally had the opportunity to live a light love, free of mistrust and full of hope. He and Leia were determined to make up for the time they had spent apart and not look back anymore. Together, they chose to move forward, focusing on the present and the future they were building together. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.